House has just passed a bill which will fund a barrier at the southern border and avoid another government shutdown ahead of Friday's funding deadline. The bill includes more than $1.3 billion for 55 miles of fencing along the border. But it does not include the $5 billion President Trump had initially demanded for the construction of a border wall. The bill passed the Senate earlier Thursday, and the White House now says President Trump will sign it on Friday, but also declare a national emergency. Let's bring in CBS News Capitol Hill producer Rebecca Kaplan. All right, so Rebecca, a lot of developments today. Walk us through what happened on Capitol Hill Thursday.
Well, Elaine, it was a fairly dramatic day, more dramatic than it necessarily needed to be as we were waiting for this vote to happen. Conferees, the people negotiating this border security bill, announced earlier in the week that they had a deal, but it was still somewhat unclear as of this morning whether President Trump would actually sign it, and that has kind of been the big question hanging over all of these funding negotiations. But earlier today, as the Senate was waiting to vote, and a lot of Republican senators were waiting on assurances from the White House, Senator Mitch McConnell, the majority leader, came to the Senate floor. He said he spoke with the president. He received the president's assurance that he would support the bill, but also that he would declare a national emergency to continue to be able to put more money toward the border wall. So after that, that finally allowed the bill to move through the Senate on a pretty large bipartisan vote. It came over to the House, and then here they just passed the bill by a pretty big margin. Let me tell you that total. It was 300 yeas to 128 nays. So not a majority of Republicans on board, but they did get several Republicans, enough to get them over the finish line and send this bill to the president's desk.
So the White House says that President Trump will sign the bill and declare a national emergency. What options are Democrats considering to challenge that?
Speaker Pelosi was very clear today that she was not going to give us a firm decision on what the House would do until she actually heard from the president. So I think we're waiting to see, presumably tomorrow when he signs this bill, what he is actually going to do, what this national emergency would look like, and then that will dictate how the House responds. For now, Pelosi says that she's just considering her options and they will decide soon. One option that is available to Democrats that a number of her members are pressing for is a resolution of disapproval, which would allow the House to formally express its disapproval and tell the president to cut off this national emergency. If it passed here and went to the Senate would have 15 days to vote on it. Now, of course, the president could always veto this resolution of disapproval, and then the question becomes, is there enough support in the House and the Senate to overrule the president on this national emergency? And that is the big question. It's possible that there is not. While a number of Republican senators do say that they are not totally comfortable with the president declaring a national emergency and they are worried about the long-term ramifications, for instance, what would a Democratic president do with this authority? It's not necessarily sure that they'll actually overrule the president here, especially now that McConnell has said that he will support the president. And on the House side, a number of Republicans, including Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy and Minority Whip Steve Scalise, say that they do support the president in his actions here because they believe that he needs to build the border wall.
So you mentioned the Republicans and what you're hearing about their reaction to the president's decision. I mean, do we know sort of at this point the depth of feeling among Republicans, you know, the depth of concern among those Republicans who are expressing some worries?
I think right now, for a lot of them, the priority is to support the president and to make sure that he is able to get his priorities through. Earlier today, we heard from some of his staunch allies in the House, Mark Meadows, Jim Jordan, Matt Gaetz, Andy Biggs, and they wrote him a letter encouraging him to use his authority to declare a national emergency and use these funds to build the wall. And as I said, among the higher-level Republicans, Kevin McCarthy, Steve Scalise, they're also supportive right now of the president taking this additional step because their constituencies, frankly, are more interested in seeing a border wall built than some of these Democratic constituencies. I think the real question is in the Senate, where a number of Republican senators have expressed a lot more discomfort with this idea, and they're going to be the ones who kind of define how this moves forward in the coming weeks. Senator Collins, Senator Murkowski have already suggested they don't think that this is the best option for the president. People are suggesting it could exceed his legal authority. So that's what we'll be watching in the coming weeks as we see what the president actually does.
All right, Rebecca Kaplan keeping track of it all for us on Capitol Hill. Rebecca, thanks very much.
Thank you, Elaine.